DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And we are back. We are already back. We've been taking some breaks, some decent length of breaks here, kind of in between each podcast. But we are back just a couple days later, and we are here for the appetizers, some appetizers we've got for you. And this is the reaction show of UFC 303, which happened June 29th, 2024, which was Saturday, and that was at T-Mobile Arena, Paradise, Nevada, United States, so Las Vegas. There was an attendance of 18,881, so there's a lot more people there than it seemed like, at least just from looking at it from early on, the early prelims. Or obviously there's like hardly anyone in the stadium or in the arenas for any of the prelims, but even once the main card started, I don't know, just didn't seem that loud. And then the total gate was 15.9 million, so they did pretty good. They did definitely had a lot of people in attendance and a lot at the gate. But this was UFC 303, Pereira versus Prochazka 2, and I kind of build this card up as being a little like underrated, like it could end up being like, one of the better cards of the year. And I don't know if it really did that. It didn't help that it wasn't the prelims weren't real good. I guess there were three knockouts in the prelims, regular prelims, not the early prelims. All the early prelims went to decision. There was one decision on just the regular prelims, and then on the main card there's just three decisions. So, but just excluding any of the preliminary cards, just the main card itself ended up coming up a little lackluster, a little short on what I really anticipated with all the talent on the card and all the name recognition on the card. It just came up a little short for me. But anyways, let's get into it. Let me describe what I'm talking to you, trying to say to you. But anyways, so can I get a menu? And so before I dive too deep into the fight card here, I got some people I want to shout out. This maybe two podcasts in a row where we got some people to shout out, got some new subscribers. So just I'm here for it. I love the comments. I love the likes, the subscribing, the sharing. I love all that. And like I said, if I can identify you, I can pick you out of a crowd, I'll shout you out because I really do appreciate it. So the first person here is Mujahid Gaither. He's a new subscriber. So Mujahid Gaither is a new subscriber. I must have enjoyed this last podcast. So hey, shout out to you. And then this is a person that's been a subscriber and been a follower for a little while, but he brought the energy to this last podcast. He brought the energy to UFC 303 and made kind of a card that just was kind of missing name recognition. He made it a little more exciting, and a little more anticipation to it. So I want to shout out Little Man Smith as well, he's one of my main guys. So really, you're holding it down for me. So I appreciate that, Little Man Smith and Mujahid Gaither. I appreciate you too. So anyone else out there, come on. I'm needing some more people to appreciate. So I'll shout you out too if you subscribe or comment, or I just can identify that you're liking what I'm doing, because I appreciate it. I appreciate that when I get that sense and feeling from people are liking what I'm doing and liking my content. So I appreciate it. So now before. Let me get that menu again. So now we're on to UFC 303, uh, Pereira versus Prochazka 2, and this is the main card. So this is the first fight on the main card is a welterweight bout between Ian Machado Gary versus Michael Venom Page, MVP. And this was a fight that ended up going to decision. It was unanimous, so it was 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. And that's just a three round 5 minute fight. So 15 minutes. They went the full 15 minutes. And so coming into this fight, you always hear this from younger fighters or just fighters that are trying to make a game plan. They act like, oh, I'm faster. This was Ian Machado Gary saying this stuff. Oh, I'm faster than Michael Venom Page. I'm a better striker than Michael Venom Page. I'm a better knockout artist than Michael Venom Page. And then what does he proceed to do? He proceeds to just go and try to take Michael Venom Page down. Like he tried to strike a little bit early on, but he found out real quick that that was dangerous. One of these point strike opportunities and explosions that he was seeing from Michael Venom Page, he wasn't wanting any more of that. So in the first round, he just after trying out and kind of testing the stand up, he just ended up just trying to taking MVP down, Michael Venom Page down, and that's something that was very evident in this fight is that MVP Michael Page doesn't have great takedown defense and not good at getting back up either. So he was pretty much controlled like the entire first round on his back. He was caught in a body triangle like the entire round, and I was surprised. It looked pretty close there, like he was about to get caught in a rear naked choke, but he was able to defend the submission at least, but he wasn't. There's no progression to try to improve your position or try to get up. So then on to the second round, he did a better job of defending the takedown because Machado Gary wasn't able to take him down in the first round, and it looked like Michael Venom Page was starting to kind of get in a flow state a little bit, and he was starting to land a little bit of stuff, and looked like he had Ian Machado Gary kind of on his heels and kind of confused as to what to do, and I think Michael Venom Page easily won the second round. But then we have the third round comes along, and obviously all fights start standing up, and MVP he wasn't really able to get anything, any shots really landed in the third round while the fight was standing. But then he actually ended up taking Ian Machado Gary down, but wasn't able to really cause any damage or really hold him down for too long. And then of course they get back up, and Machado Gary ends up just getting like this high position, like where Michael Venom Page MVP is like backpacking him and like leaning over, and they just like stayed in that position for like the last 2 minutes of the fight, basically. So Machado Gary was just trying to hold out for the win, trying to hold on to the dominant position and just sneak out a win. Because I think if that fight, obviously, if Venom Page would have had the top position on the ground when he had took him down earlier in the round, if he would have finished the round in that position, I think Michael Page would have won this fight. Or if it would have just been clearly just a striking karate fight standing like it was in the second round, I think Page would have won as well. So it was a close fight, but there seems to be we already know there's a lot of hype behind Michael Venom Page, and he was a superstar at Bellator. But I mean, he's 36 years old. The odds of him learning great uh, takedown defense and ability to get back to your feet at 36, 37 years old, probably unlikely. But what I was trying to say about Ian Machado Gary, they try to build him up as such an exciting fighter and a knockout artist and just an explosive athlete. And that was boring. He definitely played it safe against Michael Page in this fight. I wasn't impressed after watching it. I don't think I don't hear the name Ian Machado Gary and be like, oh man, I want to see that guy fight. So that was the result of the first fight on the card. All right, so now on to the second fight on the card is a women's bantamweight between Macy Chasson versus Myra Bueno Silva. And this fight ended up going TKO doctor stoppage. It's 158 minute of the second round. And before we dive too deep into that, I had picked MVP to win that first fight. So we started off the pay-per-view 0-1, and even with the prelims and the rest of the main card, not a lot of that changes. That doesn't improve a whole lot. But anyway, so on to the women's bantamweight bout. So this was I picked Myra Bueno Silva, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell on myself. Now I picked on Myra Bueno Silva in this fight, and it looked early on she was the more powerful, the better striker, the faster. Just it wasn't like overly dominated where she rocked Macy Chasson or almost got her out of there in the first round, but she clearly was the better fighter and at least the better striker in the first round. And then about a minute of the first round or so, yeah, about a minute of the first round, or the second round, the first minute of the second round, it looked like it was going to be a whole lot of the same. And then just kind of out of nowhere, Macy Chasson is able to get a takedown, which didn't look like she had to work too hard for it. And then she's just, trying to try a little bit of ground and pound. And then, man, she lands this like slicing elbows. And it looks like afterwards, it looked like Myra Bueno Silva had been hit with an axe murderer type of stuff. And then I guess they stopped it. The ref stopped it to look at it. And at first it looked like, oh yeah, they're gonna wave it off. Then the next second it looked like, oh, they're gonna go ahead and let her fight. And then the next you hear the doctor come in and try to give a little bit of a push in the back to the ref to stop it by saying like the cut was too deep, like he could see Myro Buena Silva's skull through the cut. That's how deep it was. So that was kind of annoying, just because like a brutal stoppage, like that's the same as far as I'm concerned. Cutting your opponent that bad, it's just the same as a submission or knocking someone out. They didn't defend it, so they took a bunch of damage, and that's why they lost. But just annoying to me because I picked Myra Bueno Silva, and she was winning up until she caught that elbow that cut her to the bone. So that was an interesting fight. I don't know if I'd necessarily call that really an exciting fight because I mean the first round was just controlled and just the better striker was Silva in the first, but then not a lot happened leading up to that just devastating slicing elbow by Macy Chasson. So that was impressive, and she hadn't fought in like a year either, Macy Chasson. So that's a big win for her. All right, now then on to this is the light heavyweight bout between Roman Oldage and Anthony Smith. So, you hear me talk a lot anytime Anthony Smith comes up as being a fighter, how I think like he's just a can, a jag, a gatekeeper, stepping stone type of guy. Well, yeah, I've been saying that a lot. I've been saying that for a couple of years now. Anytime Anthony Smith comes on the card, but of course, the one card that I pick him to win, he looks completely washed, uh, which was kind of crazy. I guess it seems like everyone on this card was taking these fights on short notice. I think he had a full camp, but he just didn't know who his opponent was until like a week or two before. So you can't say it was because he was out of shape necessary, but maybe it was because he was uh, preparing for a different fighter, a different style fighter. But he looked washed in this fight, in my opinion, just because Roman Oldage in the first round was just pretty much kicking his legs, eating up his legs the entire time, and Anthony Smith really didn't have any answer for it. Nothing, no response to it. And then in the second, he got taken down and pretty much controlled the whole time, and kind of like kind of like Ian Machado Gary with Michael Venom Page. He had him in the body triangle for like the entire second round, and then into the third round, which this seems to be, I don't know, this seemed to be like some habit or something that was going on here, uh, that with this card, a tendency. It was a tendency for this card for uh, fighters to just clinch up on each other or push each other up against the cage and like do nothing. That all started from the fight that I was wanting to see between Martin Boudet and Andre Arlovsky, where the heavyweight fight on the early prelims, where they were literally just clinched up against the cage like the entire time. They were literally clinched like the entire 3 rounds, the entire 15 minutes. They were just kind of clinched up and just not doing anything. And that's basically what happened in the third round. And just Anthony Smith was just never committed to anything. He never committed to any knockout shots or any takedown attempts, which I thought going into this, I thought he was going to have the advantage on the ground game and maybe be able to get uh, Roman Doldage to the ground and maybe get a submission, but that never happened. There was really no positive moments in this fight at all. But so Roman Doldage ended up winning this fight decision. So that was the unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. So I am 0-3 on the pay-per-view. So all right. Now then, on to the co-main event, which changed so much. It went from a fight at 145 to 155 to 165. And you got to applaud uh, Diego Lopez for making weight 3 different times to fight a different opponent twice. So two different opponents he had scheduled for this. But Brian Ortega, who pulled out, uh, originally they were scheduled like this was what like 3-4 hours before the fight actually that Brian Ortega pulled out, and then Dan Ige comes in. He was having a massage somewhere in Nevada, and they called him at like 4 p.m. or something, and then he made weight and agreed to the fight, and it was all finalized at like 6 p.m. or something crazy like that. So we got to applaud Dan Ige as well for taking the fight on literally like 4 hours notice. So that was just it was a roller coaster behind this fight even happening. And like I said, you got to applaud Diego Lopez for even taking it, and you got to applaud Dan Ige for even just stepping up. But I thought it's hard to really say what I thought about this fight going into it because Brian Ortega was originally who I thought was going to fight. But it kind of turned out kind of similar anyways, because I was just kind of stated that I thought Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez, both of them are super tough guys. And, unless they get the finish, the fight's probably going to a decision. And neither one of them have been finished very, very many times in their career. So I was just saying, I think Diego Lopez is the younger, up and coming, kind of on a hot streak fighter. So I figured he'd just win by decision. But that didn't happen. But ended up being basically the same type of opponent that he got in Dan Ige, who'd never been knocked out or submitted, and then didn't get knocked out or submitted in this fight. But for the most part, in like the first round, Diego Lopez, I think he was kind of trying to go hard, and he was kind of trying to test Dan Ige's maybe how good a shape he was in, or just how prepared he was for fighting on a on a co-main event a numbered pay-per-view event within just a couple hours. But it looked like he was trying to go kind of hard, really searching for that knockout, coming at all those weird angles and those odd combinations, but never really able to connect on anything real clean. Dan Ige, obviously, he's got a jaw made out of stone because he's never been knocked out, never been submitted. So he's tough, just like Brian Ortega. He's tough. And then in the let's see, in the second round, Diego Lopez he changed his strategy a little bit, and he went for the takedown, and just like in all the other fights, just like the Roman uh, Doldage Anthony Smith fight and the Ian Machado Gary and Michael Page fight. He ended up taking his back and held Dan Ige. At times it was a body triangle, and then just finished the round on Dan Ige's back. So Diego Lopez looked like he pretty much clearly won the first two rounds, and then that seemed very evident in the third round, where it looked like Diego Lopez was kind of just trying to coast to a win. You know, he wasn't trying anything risky or trying to do anything that was reckless. Just because I definitely think he feels that he won the first two rounds, and he saw it with like when there was like about 2 minutes left. He was trying to kind of clinch up and push Dan Ige up against the cage, and he saw him. He was kind of looking at the clock, but man, I've been interested to see how this fight would have went if it would have been a 5 round fight, because it looked like even with Dan Ige coming off of such short notice, and then Diego Lopez, I guess he did make 145, so he's actually the fighter of the two that actually had to cut weight. But then he was, I mean, he would have been 164 pounds against Brian Ortega at 145 on the night of the fight anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it was kind of a lackluster conclusion kind of to that fight, I guess you could say, because he looked really good and he was going for the knockout. He was going for the submission in the second, but then third just kind of coasted. And honestly, Dan Ige won the third round. So like I said, it would have been nice to see what they've done that now. Had some co-main events be 5 rounders, I guess, if they're title eliminator bouts. But I can understand why this wasn't a 5 rounder, obviously, because of all the short notice and uh, weight class changes and all that. But so I picked Diego Lopez. So we finally got on the board. Got on the board. Was 1-4, and that was a decision, unanimous. 29, 28, 29, 28, 29, 28, and honestly can't even give myself a full point here. If I was doing any kind of scoreboard or record following, it would be maybe just a half a point because I picked Diego Lopez, but it's not who he fought. He wasn't fighting Ryan Ortega, so you got to take that into account a little bit. So now, when you're doing predictions, now onto the main event. This was obviously the fight that when it come down to it, this was the only thing that could really save this card, at least the pay-per-view card, because there were some knockouts on the preliminary card, but to save the preliminary card and make anyone not quite as mad or angry that they spent $80 on this card for three knockouts or three decisions and a doctor stoppage. So this may have made them not quite as upset. So this is the main event, the light heavyweight bout between the champion Alex Pereira versus the challenger Jiri Prochazka. And so in the first round, this fight started a lot differently than the first matchup between Jiri Prochazka. In the first one, they were trading a lot of leg kicks, but it seemed like Jiri Prochazka was landing the better shots and got Alexander Pereira kind of wobbled a little bit, and he was taking all these odd angles and stuff that seemed to kind of be bothering. It's kind of taking a while for Alex Pereira to kind of figure out what he was doing to him, and then it was more of that in the second round before he got caught with the what was it was the left hook, and then took all the elbows to the side of the head that took him out. But yeah, there were Jiri Prochazka in this fight in the first round, and then a little bit of the second round. Never looked he never looked at ease. He looked scared and nervous the entire time. I don't know if he hardly even landed anything on Alex Pereira. And this fight probably should probably the UFC doesn't have the rule where you can't be saved by the bell. Honestly, it should have been stopped at the end of the round when it was, because neither one of them really landed anything all that devastating in the first round or nothing. But then at the very end of the first round, Yari Prochazka lands that like straight left cross, that like, hook cross, and dropped him on his ass. And right as Alex Pereira is kind of going in for the kill, the horn sound, so he gets saved, and you can see he's out of it. That was pretty much a walk off. Okay, should have been a walk off KO there, but it wasn't. And then the second round starts, and you're with 13 seconds in, he TKO head kicks him and punches and finishes him. Like it shouldn't never even got to that, but exciting. It just shows you how much of a killer, a knockout artist Alex Pereira is. And I've said it on the previous podcast. I kind of look at the light heavyweight position, and obviously just because they're heavyweights, they're the heaviest division. I almost look at these light heavyweight and heavyweight as like the most prestigious uh, divisions. And like if you hold the belt at heavyweight or you hold the belt at light heavyweight, you're the best fighter in the world. Is how I look at that. And Alex Pereira, he's I would say he's the most popular and definitely on the highest career arc right now. And they asked him at the interview, would he like to move up in heavyweight? And he said that he would. I mean, I would love to see him fight John Jones. Really, if he moves up for heavyweight for any other reason, that's basically about the only person I want to see him fight. Because I don't want Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight and then fighting some heavyweight wrestler that weighs like 200, weighs in on fight night like or weighs in at the weigh-ins at like 266 pounds, and is like what, like 40 pounds heavier than Alex Pereira, and he's just somehow Pereira, I guess, wouldn't be able to land a knockout shot because I guess every fight starts on a feet. But I mean, I just don't see how someone that's not a wrestler and would be 40 pounds lighter would be able to fight that off from a true heavyweight. But I want to see it, and I want to see a fighter, the first fighter, Alex Pereira, be the first fighter to hold the belt at 3 different weight classes. So that would be really cool to witness as well. But so UFC 303, I went one and a half and 1.5 and 3 on the card because I'm only giving myself half a credit for the Lopez Dan Ige fight because Brian Ortega dropped out, but not just because of my results, but my results off of my predictions, but just the fights in general were just kind of lackluster, and there was a lot of clinching and leaning up against the cage and just kind of holding out for the end of the fight or holding out for the victory. And it could have been more exciting, and I expected it to be, honestly, with the names and the equality of the matchups. But really, the only excitement you really got was from the main event, which I mean, yeah, it would have been really surprising if that fight ended up being lackluster and a snooze fest. So at least we know things are right in the world because someone's going to sleep when you get a matchup with Alex Pereira. So it was a good card, but definitely it could have been better. But I guess we're on to some more fight nights and UFC 304 next. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?